We were talking about this earlier, talking about all the different delays and all the crazy things that are happening, and talking about continuing to pick up stories and continue to move them forward. This is actually from Polygon, and this story was from May 26th. It basically starts off with, it says, the next phase of Star Wars universe delayed into 2021. This story is by Charlie Hall, and it says Star Wars, the High Republic event takes place 200 years before The Phantom Menace. This was the series they talked about. There were going to be a series of novels and comics. Read just a little bit of this just briefly. It says the Star Wars, the High Republic, the ambitious cross-media collection of books and comics have been delayed into 2021. The announcement came Tuesday at the official Star Wars website, and I heard it was without a lot of fanfare. The High Republic is a new setting in the Star Wars universe. It takes place 200 years before the events of Star Wars, The Phantom Menace. The media onslaught will now begin on January 5th, 2021, with Charles Soule's adult novel, Star Wars, The High Republic, Light of the Jedi, and Justina Ireland's middle grade novel, Star Wars, The High Republic, A Test of Courage. Then comes the young adult novel by Claudia Gray titled Star Wars, The High Republic, Into the Dark on February 2nd, 2021. Release dates for the comics, Marvel's Star Wars, The High Republic, and IDW's Star Wars, The High Republic Adventures will be announced sometime in the future. You know, the biggest thing actually coming out of this article that I really want to talk about, that I'm not prepared to really talk about, is what in the heck is the deal with IDW and Marvel partnering the way that they have. You know, it was breaking news a little while ago when they announced that IDW is going to be basically publishing a line of Spider-Man comic books, essentially a more all-reader accessible Spider-Man comic book series. And that's the biggest thing I'm finding out of this article right now. That's what I really want to talk about, but at the same point, that's not the point of it. But what is the deal with Marvel partnering with IDW in this way? Maybe for another time.
Well, I can tell you what the rumor is, Dave. I can't back it up with any official sources, but I can tell you what the rumor is, and you've probably heard it.
I'm curious what the rumor is, because I'm going to be honest with you. I don't understand. I mean, I've heard that the whole licensing idea, that eventually they just might get into the licensing business and they won't really worry with publishing new comics. We've kind of talked about that, I think, sort of soft touch topic before.
We've touched on it before when we've talked about the state of the comic book industry and things like that. And that's absolutely what the rumor is. The rumor is that this is basically a soft push. They're testing the waters so they can get up, so Disney can get out of publishing. They don't want to publish anymore. They never have. But Disney has always licensed their products when it comes to comics and books and things like that. They've never been a big fan of publishing. Even if you go back to the Uncle Scrooge comics and things like that are much beloved and have all sorts of, a huge following and everything like that, Disney didn't publish them. They licensed them out to other properties and things like that. So that's their MO. And a lot of people think they want to close down Marvel Comics completely and just license the characters out. And then all the new stuff's going to come out of the studios. That's what the rumor is. And this is the soft way for them to do it with the Adventures line, which for anybody who doesn't know that, the Adventures line is geared towards children, which is, of course, the future of this media. You know what I mean? Is always going to be kids. But that's the rumor out there. How true it is, I don't know, but definitely from the way that Disney operates, you could definitely see it. Like I said, I can go all the way back to Scrooge McDuck and tell you that's how Disney operates. They don't want to be in the comics business. Never have.
Right. I can see that. And then Peggy, touching on the main topic here about the fact that the Star Wars, The High Republic has basically been delayed. She says it didn't get fanfare because I think everyone just expected it. And I'd say yes. In all honesty, I thought they were further along in production and development of a lot of these, and that it wouldn't necessarily be that heavily affected. I understand on the comics side because there's so much art production that has to happen, and it passes between so many hands depending upon studios, the various freelance professionals that you involve in such a production. But on the novel side, I would just assume it's the writer, the editor. Of course, they've got to run it through the stories group. I would have thought it would have, been, more close to roll out. Maybe there's just elements of it that aren't ready, so they've decided to sit on the whole thing. But I just thought it dovetailed very well into the previous segment, because we were talking about the idea of picking something up. Just because some people don't like something, it doesn't mean you can't add something interesting to it and usher in a whole new era, because I feel like The Mandalorian is an opportunity for them to do that. I guess time will tell, and we'll find out in 2021 whether or not Star Wars: The High Republic will also be that for Star Wars as a more I don't know how to state this. We'll have to see if it helps do for Star Wars overall what I think The Mandalorian has started to do, and help kind of, within certain fans' eyes, bring it, kind of back. I was actually kind of curious about this line. It's been a little while since I've been really into the Star Wars novels and stuff. And I was curious to maybe give some of this a try and see what I thought of it. Although, I'll be honest with you, I keep wanting to go back through, if they weren't so expensive, and actually pick up some of Richard Hatch's Battlestar Galactica novels that I had missed when they were originally first coming out. I've been reading a lot of them, like Warhawk and Rebellion, and find the ones I was missing, and actually go back and actually just get more immersed into the classic Battlestar Galactica world myself.
The biggest problem I have with this thing with the High Republic is I feel like it's a clear example of them taking something that's clearly based on the EU, the Knights of the Old Republic, and then pretending like they came up with a new idea. That's my take on it. I think that's what this is. I think it's them trying to market it so they don't have to deal with the Knights of the Old Republic continuity. And the funny thing is, I don't really have a dog in that fight because I've never been a big EU guy. The only EU thing I got into was the Thrawn series of books, and that was because of my brother, because he owned them. So I happened to read them and thought they were excellent. The whole Timothy Zahn story I thought was an amazing story arc. I wish that had been Disney Wars. I really do. I really wish that had been Disney Wars adaptation of the Thrawn trilogy. That I think that would have been awesome. But I'm not a big EU guy, and I've said this before. I've said it many times, folks. When it comes to the directors, the writers, the producers, and that includes the Filonis and the Dave Favres, who I have great respect for, they could care less about this stuff. They don't care about the books. Never have, never will. So it all gets trashed. That's my problem with it,
Yeah, you can see that there's sometimes not a lot of respect for quote unquote the source material. But every once in a while, someone does a really amazing job respecting the source material. And I prefer, in all honesty, experiencing a lot of these stories, the side stories and the expansion of the universe. I usually enjoy those more in comics and novels, to be honest. So, well, I'd be curious to check this out and see if it's any good. So, but like I said, I also find myself like going, man, I should just run down Richard Hatch's Battlestar Galactica novels.
That would be good. That would be good.
So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. So, because some of them are actually quite pricey, because they didn't have very huge print runs, and getting a hold of some of them is a expensive prospect. And I was even considering too, even going even further back, because they used to take a lot of the teleplays for the shows and then work them up as novels. They'd actually been releasing those too. And I didn't even realize those even existed. And primarily those were paperbacks. And I was like, oh, that'd be cool to try and, run down some of those. So we'll see. We'll see.
Well, Man of Sand brings up the point. It said it almost feels like the Disney Star Wars people are imitating the proposed follow-ups to Game of Thrones, which are about exploring the ancient universe. In other words, they're prequels, they're not sequels. But the funny thing is, I think they're just as stalled as this project is. I don't think they're going anywhere either, especially if you're talking about the live action stuff. I know that there's been books, that are set, prior to the era of Game of Thrones. But of course, Game of Thrones itself, what's the official title? Song of Fire and Ice. That's still not finished. The book is still not finished. The show is finished. The Game of Thrones television show is finished, but the show actually went past the novels. So he's, George R. R. Martin still has another novel to write as an actual sequel, but there are several prequel novels, and that was what HBO was talking about doing, was adapting some of those and doing some, prequel stories. And so, yeah, I think that there's some, obviously there's some ideas there that, I think it goes one way or the other, right? When you want to get rid of continuity, you either have to go way, 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 way back, or you go way, way, way in the future. And that's, I think, just something that all these different showrunners, producers, executives out there, they all have an interest in that because they're too lazy to actually, be devoted to the source material, to the original, and they don't like canon. I say it all the time. Continuity is the enemy of lazy writers. So put it way in the past or put it way in the future, and then you have to deal with any of that stuff.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what they do with it because, and we'll see which approach works. With this, they're going to dial it back, and then we previously discussed Star Trek Discovery, where they're trying to push it forward. They're going into the far-flung future, to get away from some of this stuff, and then they're going to try and go back. So, I don't know. We'll have to see. Let's see. And then Peggy's got a comment where she says, it should have been Return of the Jedi, then into Zahn's Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and Last Command. I think a lot of fans would have liked that, Peggy. A lot of fans would like that. And she says that would have made her so happy. A lot of fans very happy.
There were a lot of fans that would have supported you on that, Peggy. There's a lot of fans that would have supported you. And I don't even know all that material. I didn't really get into Dark Force Rising. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say I didn't get into Dark Force Rising. I read the books. Okay, but I'm just saying that, in terms of the EU in general, that was the only stuff that I really got into. I don't have any other stuff to judge it on because there were lots of other books, besides the Zahn trilogy. That there were plenty of other EU books that other fans would love to have seen adapted, but that didn't happen. So,
and as we've mentioned on the show previously, there's a lot of things in the Disney Star Wars films that I think had a lot more potential. They just didn't really explore it very much. Like in the last film, The Rise of Skywalker, I like the idea of the Sith Zealots. Like, I think there's something really interesting there. And I like the idea of the Knights of Ren. And if they did kind of set those characters up and kind of carried them through the 3 movies and actually explored a lot of that and led up to the events in Rise of Skywalker, I think I would have enjoyed it more. Because I think there's something really interesting with all those concepts and ideas. It's just they're just kind of stuck in or shoehorned in a weird place. And James Stowe made the comment earlier talking about Clone Wars and talked about how he felt like that with Anakin, one of the things he thought was really great is his turn to evil felt more earned because they had more time. Well, it's the same thing. Those ideas, those concepts to me, I find very interesting, and I wish they would have spent more time exploring them. And one of the things that's really nice about books and comics and such is it gives you the opportunity to explore those kind of ideas and kind of do more world building and flesh out concepts and develop them a little bit further. So, I guess we'll just see. I keep coming back to that. We'll have to see how this works out. I don't know. I feel like the name's a bit problematic though. Star Wars: The High Republic. It's like when we were working through these titles. Star Wars: High Republic, Light of the Jedi. Star Wars: High Republic, A Test of Courage. Star Wars: The High Republic, Into the Dark. It's just like, wow, it's a lot of words. It's a lot of words. From a marketing standpoint, I'm thinking, that's a lot of words. So, there you go.